He thought he committed the perfect crime, until he realized he killed the bride of a ruthlessly trained killer. Welcome back to the channel, where today, the hunter becomes the ultimate prey. The story opens on Kyung-chul, a seemingly hardworking, honest man who makes a living as a van driver, but beneath that ordinary facade lies something far more sinister. One night while driving home, he notices a broken-down car stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire, so he pulls over, steps out, and approaches the young woman waiting inside, asking if she needs a hand. She politely declines, explaining that her driver will be there in just a few minutes, so Kyung-chul simply tells her to stay safe and walks back to his vehicle. The woman assumes he drove away, but suddenly, Kyung-chul pulls his van right in front of her car, blocking her in, and the moment she shines a light on him, he launches a vicious, unhinged attack. She tries frantically to escape through the passenger side, but the door is jammed, and as her desperate screams echo into the empty night, Kyung-chul brutally beats her into unconsciousness with a heavy hammer like a merciless predator. He drags her blood-soaked body back to his hidden lair, where the young woman slowly regains consciousness, terrified to find herself tied up and completely helpless. Kyung-chul casually picks out a sharp knife, running a whetstone across the blade while running his fingers over her face, chillingly commenting on how soft her skin is and how little effort this will take. She begs for her life, weeping and promising to never tell a single soul, revealing that she is pregnant, but the revelation fails to stir a single drop of mercy in his cold heart. He brutally murders her, dismembers her body, and packs the remains into black trash bags before tossing them into a nearby river, completely unaware that her engagement ring slipped off and became wedged deep inside his floor drain. Back at his lair, he scrubs the entire room with acid to destroy the stench of flesh, but the deep bloodstains etched into the floor reveal a horrifying truth: this was far from his first kill. The next morning, he casually goes back to work as if taking a life was just another mundane task, totally oblivious to the fact that his victim was the daughter of a retired police chief. Shortly after, a group of kids playing near the riverbank while looking for a lost ball spot a suspicious black bag caught in the brush, and inside, they find a severed human ear. The horrifying discovery brings over 100 police officers to the scene to search for the rest of the body, and because the victim is connected to top brass, aggressive news reporters flood the area, turning the crime scene into a chaotic media circus. Deep in the brush, an officer spots strands of hair, and when he flips the object over with a stick, he discovers the severed head of the chief's daughter. Panic breaks out, and the officer hastily places the head into a box and rushes toward the forensic unit, but greedy journalists trip him up in their frantic bid to snap photos, causing the box to drop and allowing the poor girl's head to be trampled underfoot right in front of her devastated father. Her fiancé, Soo-hyun, watches the horrific scene unfold in silent shock, utterly paralyzed by grief. The search turns up only a few fragmented remains, as the rest were either swept away or torn apart by scavengers. Her father breaks down, apologizing to Soo-hyun for failing to protect her, but Soo-hyun blames himself just as much, knowing he was the one who told her to park there and wait for help that night. After a somber funeral, Soo-hyun vows to track down her killer and show no mercy, taking a 2-week leave from his agency, not to grieve, but to hunt. Armed with a GPS tracker and a wiretap from a trusted friend, he secures a secret list of 4 prime suspects flagged by the police and begins hunting them down one by one. He slips like a ghost into the home of the first suspect, catching the man red-handed watching pornography, and brutally attacks him, strangling him with a wire until he passes out. When the suspect wakes up tied to a chair, crying for mercy, Soo-hyun shows him a picture of his fiancée, but when the man claims he does not recognize her, Soo-hyun grabs a hammer and mercilessly crushes his groin, smashing it until the man is left half dead in agonizing pain. Soo-hyun dumps him on the street to suffer, and after being rushed to the hospital, the terrified suspect eagerly confesses to every past crime he ever committed, including the unsolved rape and murder of 2 schoolgirls months prior, begging the police to lock him up just to protect him from the monster hunting him. Moving down his list, Soo-hyun targets the second suspect, ramming his scooter off the road, beating him senseless, and demanding answers, but this man also has no connection to her murder. With only 2 names remaining on his list, including Kyung-chul, Soo-hyun prepares to make his next move, ultimately deciding to bypass the third suspect and train his sights directly on the van driver. That same night, a young woman stands alone at a bus stop, growing increasingly anxious as time creeps by and no bus appears. Panic sets in with every passing second, but just as her heart begins to race, a van pulls up beside her. Kyung-chul rolls down the window, casually telling her that the buses have stopped running for the night and offering her a ride. Hesitant to trust a stranger, she hesitates, but knowing it is the last vehicle coming down this road, she reluctantly steps inside, reassured by his deceptively gentle appearance. A short distance into the drive, Kyung-chul begins rummaging around in the back seat, making her feel uneasy as he repeatedly turns around. Suddenly, he pulls out a heavy iron pipe, mockingly asking if she feels like she made a massive mistake, and before she can even comprehend what is happening, he savagely bludgeons her to death. He drags her body back to his lair, dismembers her, and discards the remains in a remote location, marking his second ruthless murder in less than a week without a single ounce of remorse. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun follows the trail straight to Kyung-chul's family home, finding an impoverished household struggling under the weight of massive debt. The family assumes Soo-hyun is just another loan shark coming to harass his mother, but he pretends to be an insurance agent delivering a payout for Kyung-chul. When he asks for a recent photo to confirm his identity, Kyung-chul's mother hands over a picture, terrified by how cold and menacing her son's expression has become. Although the family does not know his current address, Kyung-chul's young son occasionally stays in touch, leading Soo-hyun to an isolated house in a deserted area. Knowing the killer could return at any moment, Soo-hyun breaks in and thoroughly searches the place, discovering several locked boxes hidden inside. Breaking the padlocks open, he recoils in horror. Kyung-chul is a sick psychopath who kept trophies from all his victims, carefully storing their clothes, shoes, and purses. In the next room, blood-soaked floorboards paint a grim picture of where the dismemberments took place, and when Soo-hyun peers into the floor drain, he finds his fiancée's engagement ring, breaking down in tears as the horrific reality of her final moments sinks in. Soo-hyun could easily call the police and end it here, but justice through the law offers no relief. He wants to make Kyung-chul suffer excruciating agony. The next day, Kyung-chul works his job driving a school bus, dropping children off one by one, completely aware that the law is closing in after receiving urgent calls from the school. Realizing his time is running out, he decides to commit one last atrocity before getting caught, eyeing the last schoolgirl remaining on the bus and kidnapping her. Having already planted a hidden tracker on the vehicle, Soo-hyun pursues him to an abandoned location where Kyung-chul is preparing to assault and bury the girl alive. Just as the monster reaches the height of his cruelty, a voice calls out his name, breaking his concentration. Recognizing Soo-hyun, Kyung-chul lunges forward, but Soo-hyun ruthlessly overpowers him, beating him bloody before wrapping plastic tightly around his face to suffocate him. Kyung-chul slips into unconsciousness, hovering on the brink of death, and though Soo-hyun raises a heavy rock to crush his skull, he stops himself at the last second, leaving behind an envelope of cash for medical treatment when Kyung-chul wakes up in agonizing pain. Kyung-chul quickly dresses and flees, completely unaware that he is walking straight into a trap. Soo-hyun secretly forced him to swallow a GPS tracker and a microphone, listening to every breath he takes. Desperate to escape, Kyung-chul hitches a ride with two men, but he instantly senses danger when he notices the driver does not match the photo on the registration, and the man in the back seat is secretly reaching for a weapon. Before they can strike, Kyung-chul viciously plunges a knife into the driver's neck, sending the car veering out of control in a violent struggle that ends with Kyung-chul mercilessly slaughtering both men. Popping the trunk, he finds a bag of cash along with the corpse of the real driver, and by the time Soo-hyun arrives at the stationary signal, he finds 3 more bodies left in Kyung-chul's wake. Obsessed with figuring out who is hunting him, Kyung-chul slips into a local clinic to tend to his severe injuries, agonizing over his unknown attacker. But as he grabs his medication and turns to leave, his eyes lock onto a young nurse walking past, and the terrifying, predatory instinct instantly floods back into his eyes, as if he just spotted his next prey. Kyung-chul approaches her, asking for her age and casually prying if she has a boyfriend. Under normal circumstances, his unsettling behavior would have raised immediate red flags and alerted the police, but the nurse is only 22 years old, too young and inexperienced to fully grasp the looming danger, feeling only a slight wave of discomfort. She breathes a quiet sigh of relief when he finally steps out of the clinic, but the moment she enters the back medical room, her heart sinks as she finds him sitting there, patiently waiting for her. She demands that he leave at once, but Kyung-chul remains completely unfazed, calmly stepping forward to lock the door behind him. He ominously reveals that his night was supposed to be perfect until an unwanted intruder ruined everything, making it clear that he intends to inflict upon her every violent urge he was denied earlier. He orders her to strip, and when she refuses, he turns to terrifying threats, ignoring her desperate pleas for mercy as he brutally forces himself on her. Outside the building, Soo-hyun listens to every agonizing moment through the hidden audio feed. Realizing her life is in imminent danger, he charges into the clinic, grabs a heavy fire extinguisher, and smashes it squarely over Kyung-chul's head. Kyung-chul lunges forward with a knife, but Soo-hyun catches the sharp blade with his bare hands, leaving the killer stunned by his relentless, terrifying lack of fear. Soo-hyun savagely beats him to a pulp, leaving him half dead on the floor, and as the traumatized nurse attempts to flee, Soo-hyun stops her, insisting she patch up the monster's wounds first. Mocking the groaning killer, Soo-hyun warns him not to be so weak, declaring that this nightmare is only just beginning. To ensure he can never walk without an agonizing limp, Soo-hyun ruthlessly carves out a chunk of flesh from Kyung-chul's leg before leaving. When Kyung-chul regains consciousness, he finds himself in unbearable torment. His injuries have been stitched up, but without a single grain of painkiller, forcing him to feel every single needle stitch pulling at his flesh. Paralyzed by frustration, he cannot comprehend how his attacker keeps tracking his every move, desperately tearing apart his clothes, shoes, and vehicle, totally unaware that the GPS device is resting deep inside his own stomach. Soon after, his car breaks down on a quiet road, forcing him to trek on foot with the intent to ambush the next driver who stops. But his luck runs out when the vehicle that pulls over is packed with armed military officers, who ask if he was in an accident. Shaken by their intimidating presence, Kyung-chul stands completely frozen, relieved only when they fail to recognize him and drive off, leaving him to limp down the lonely highway. Meanwhile, as Soo-hyun continues his relentless pursuit, he receives a call from his former father-in-law, the retired police chief, who warns him that the authorities are closing in on his vigilante trail, pleading with him to drop the vendetta and let the law handle the killer. His sister-in-law, Se-yeon, echoes the same plea, crying that no amount of torture will ever bring her sister back or heal their broken family. But Soo-hyun refuses to back down, coldly stating that his hunt is far from over. He intends to use Kyung-chul as a stepping stone to drag other monsters out into the light. The trail leads to Tae-ju, another notorious serial killer with a cannibalistic obsession who is currently feeding human flesh to his hounds inside a secluded compound. Kyung-chul slips inside the house to seek refuge with his old partner in crime, noting the stark contrast between his own desperate, impoverished existence and Tae-ju's lavish lifestyle. Watching Tae-ju casually chew on human remains, Kyung-chul asks if he ever gets tired of it, to which Tae-ju replies that once you get a taste for human meat, nothing else satisfies. Outside, Soo-hyun notices that the GPS tracker has been stationary at the remote compound for an extended period and begins moving in for the kill. Inside, Kyung-chul recounts the relentless lunatic hunting him down, and Tae-ju quickly realizes that the attacker is either a grieving relative of a past victim or an even bigger psychopath who gets off on hunting predators. Laughing off the danger, Tae-ju jokes that Kyung-chul has finally met his match and tells him to rest up. But Kyung-chul remains fixated on his tormentor, replaying the endless cycle of beatings, patched up wounds, and releases in his mind until a sudden realization hits him. He remembers the distinct ring worn on his attacker's left hand, the exact same engagement ring he saw on the pregnant woman he murdered a week ago. He finally realizes he is being hunted by her fiancé. Meanwhile, Tae-ju head down to his basement meat locker to prepare his next meal. Surrounded by frozen corpses, he decides he wants fresh meat and drags out a terrified young woman he has been keeping hostage, the sister of a girl he killed days prior. As she begs for her life on the prep table, Tae-ju sets up his music player to set the mood, but just as he turns to sharpen his blade, the music abruptly cuts out. Turning around to restart the track, he finds his victim missing, and when he spins back, Soo-hyun is standing right in front of him, radiating pure malice. Tae-ju lunges with a knife, but Soo-hyun catches his arm and snaps it with brutal force, sending him screaming to the floor in a bloody brawl. Hearing the violent commotion from upstairs, Kyung-chul grabs a shotgun and rushes down into the basement, arriving just in time to see Soo-hyun standing over Tae-ju's battered body. Kyung-chul immediately opens fire, but Soo-hyun ducks into the shadows, narrowly dodging the blast as he makes a swift escape into the night, leaving Kyung-chul to pull his bloody comrade from the wreckage. When Tae-ju attempts to draw a knife to attack, the handle snaps off, leaving the blade jammed tightly inside the weapon's casing. Sensing his opening, Soo-hyun bolts for safety, but Tae-ju's girlfriend blindsides him, causing him to lose his grip on his only weapon. As he stoops to retrieve it, Tae-ju tackles him from behind, slamming him onto the ground and delivering a brutal beatdown that leaves Soo-hyun's face soaked in his own blood. Hearing Kyung-chul's heavy footsteps approaching through the dark corridor, Soo-hyun frantically scatters sharp metal spikes along the ground, causing Kyung-chul to step directly onto them and collapse with an agonizing roar. Seizing the momentary advantage, Soo-hyun pounces on Kyung-chul, pummeling his head until blood splatters across the concrete floor. Consumed by unbridled rage, Soo-hyun nearly forgets his own cardinal rule. He needs to keep this monster alive to prolong his suffering. Realizing his fatal misstep, he rushes the unconscious killer to a secret medical clinic to keep him breathing. The following morning, law enforcement raids Tae-ju's secluded compound, uncovering a horrifying chamber filled with dismembered corpses that sends shockwaves through the department. While Tae-ju is placed under heavy armed guard, their primary target, Kyung-chul, remains unaccounted for. Back at headquarters, the police chief meets with the retired commissioner, insisting that Soo-hyun must be brought in before he completely transforms into the very monster he is hunting. The commissioner, having already tried and failed to reason with his grieving son-in-law, reveals the full extent of Soo-hyun's vigilantism, prompting a citywide manhunt for both men. Meanwhile, inside the hidden clinic, Kyung-chul lies stable. Soo-hyun's trusted ally urges him to hand the killer over to the authorities now that his point has been made, but Soo-hyun remains steadfast, bound by his solemn promise to his fallen fiancée to inflict every ounce of terror Kyung-chul inflicted on her. When his friend asks whether the swallow tracking capsule is still broadcasting properly, Soo-hyun hushes him, checking if the patient has awakened. His friend reassures him that the killer is heavily sedated and won't regain consciousness for at least another day. However, he severely underestimates his patient. Kyung-chul has been awake the entire time, quietly listening to every detail of their strategy. Leaving him unattended this time proves to be a catastrophic mistake. Once the room clears, a twisted smile spreads across Kyung-chul's face as he realizes the source of the mysterious tracking signal rests deep within his own stomach. Speaking directly into the air, he taunts the hidden receiver, mockingly thanking Soo-hyun for the thrilling game before warning him that sparing his life will be the greatest regret of his existence. Desperate to purge the device, Kyung-chul breaks into a nearby pharmacy, hunting down powerful laxatives. As he tears through the shelves, he speaks into the microphone, delivering a devastating revelation. He coldly informs Soo-hyun that his fiancée begged for her life, pleading that she was carrying his unborn child right before he butchered her. The shocking revelation shatters Soo-hyun's soul, leaving him broken and weeping. By the time he storms the pharmacy, Kyung-chul has already fled, leaving behind a battered pharmacist. Soo-hyun frantically calls an ambulance for the victim, but Kyung-chul is already steps ahead, locking himself inside a public restroom to purge his system and retrieve the metallic capsule. To completely throw Soo-hyun off his scent, Kyung-chul ambushes a passerby, brutally beating him before forcing the activated capsule down the stranger's throat. With the signal now tracking a random civilian, Kyung-chul slips back into the shadows, leaving Soo-hyun completely blind to his next move. Driven to absolute desperation, Soo-hyun rushes to the hospital where the injured Tae-ju is under guard, demanding to know where his partner went. Tae-ju simply laughs in his face, warning him that Kyung-chul is a predator who is always one step ahead. He taunts Soo-hyun, predicting that Kyung-chul will target the commissioner next before surrendering to police just to rob Soo-hyun of his vengeance, callously describing the depraved acts he inflicted on his fiancée. Overcome with blinding fury, Soo-hyun grabs Tae-ju and violently rips his jaw apart, leaving the cannibal screaming in agony. Realizing the impending danger, Soo-hyun alerts the chief that Kyung-chul is heading toward the commissioner's residence, prompting immediate police dispatch. Soo-hyun desperately dials the commissioner to warn him, but Kyung-chul has already breached the house, beating the retired officer into a bloody pulp. Just as the killer prepares to give himself up, the commissioner's younger daughter, Se-yeon, arrives at the dark house, calling out for her father. Kyung-chul leaps from the darkness like a rabid beast, overpowering her in seconds. By the time Soo-hyun arrives at the gruesome scene, he finds the commissioner barely conscious and Se-yeon missing, leaving him weeping in utter terror over what the monster will do to her. Shortly after, the police chief's phone rings. It is Kyung-chul, demanding to speak directly to Soo-hyun. He provides an address, but when officers arrive at the desolate dump site, they discover Se-hyun's lifeless body discarded among the trash, brutally violated and murdered. Having completed his final horror, Kyung-chul prepares to execute the ultimate insult, surrendering directly to the police at a designated public location, knowing the law will protect him from Soo-hyun's wrath forever. Dozens of armed officers surround the drop point as a car pulls up, and Kyung-chul steps out, covered in blood and sporting a triumphant grin, completely devoid of remorse. But as the officers move in with handcuffs, Soo-hyun intercepts the scene, snatching the monster away before the police can secure him. He drags Kyung-chul back to his own notorious slaughterhouse, the very room where so many innocent women met their tragic end, except this time, it is Kyung-chul's neck positioned beneath the heavy guillotine blade. When Kyung-chul wakes up, he finds his head locked tight inside the execution mechanism. Standing over him, Soo-hyun coldly admits his past mistakes, promising that this time, there will be no mercy. Pressing a burning cigarette directly into Kyung-chul's open wounds, Soo-hyun listens in stone-cold silence as the monster finally screams in unadulterated pain. Soo-hyun does not stop there, jamming a heavy iron rod deep into Kyung-chul's mouth to force his jaws wide open. Writhing in agony, Kyung-chul muffledly screams for him to just end it and kill him right now, but Soo-hyun coldly responds that death will not come that easily, explaining that if a quick end were the goal, he would have killed him long ago. He vows to execute him only at the moment of maximum torment, when absolute terror consumes his soul, declaring that only then will true vengeance be served. Yet even with death hanging directly over his head, Kyung-chul bursts into a psychotic laugh, his eyes still completely devoid of fear. He mockingly taunts Soo-hyun, boasting that his pain tolerance far exceeds anything Soo-hyun can comprehend, urging him to drop the dramatic speech and cut to the chase. He sneers that Soo-hyun was a loser from the start, demanding to know if he truly believes he won this game, aggressively yelling that no matter what tortures are inflicted, Soo-hyun will get nothing from him, so he might as well admit defeat. Soo-hyun desires for the monster's spirit to suffer long after his body perishes, but he leaves the exact details of his trap unsaid. Walking out of the room, he locks the heavy door from the outside and slowly begins to walk away, just as a car pulls up near the entrance of Kyung-chul's house. It is Kyung-chul's elderly parents alongside his young son, visiting him completely oblivious to the gruesome trap laid out inside. Soo-hyun has rigged a taut rope inside Kyung-chul's mouth, connecting it directly to the door handle outside, meaning the moment anyone opens that door from the exterior, the mechanism will trigger the executioner's guillotine blade to drop instantly, severing Kyung-chul's neck. Placing his earphones back on, Soo-hyun prepares to listen to the final, horrifying crescendo of his masterpiece as the family approaches the entrance. Recognizing his son's voice right outside the door, panic finally grips Kyung-chul's soul, and he frantically tries to scream at them to stop and stay back, but the thick restraint jammed into his mouth muffles his cries into unrecognizable groans. At last, the terrifying agony Soo-hyun prayed for washes over the monster. Kyung-chul finds himself helpless, silently begging for mercy from his own family. But his frantic desperation is futile. The boy pulls the door open, the heavy blade crashes down with brutal force, and Kyung-chul's head is instantly severed. The horror of the scene sends his parents into hysterical screams of agony, their shattered cries echoing clearly through the hidden microphone straight into Soo-hyun's earpieces. He believed that completing this bloody crusade would finally lift the agonizing weight off his chest and grant him peace, but as he walks down the empty road, tears streaming down his face, the hollow reality sets in. Consumed by a blinding obsession for revenge, his ruthless cat-and-mouse game allowed innocent lives to be brutally cut short, lives that would have been saved had he simply handed the killer over to the law in the beginning. Broken, hollow, and completely consumed by the monster he fought so hard to destroy, Soo-hyun wanders aimlessly into the dark, his mind lost forever to the trauma. And with that, our story comes to an end, so if you enjoyed this ride, make sure to smash that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop your thoughts down in the comments below, because I'd love to know what you think.